So in part one, we talked about how Sir Raymond Derry started a war between the Starks and the Lannisters using the small folk. From this, the Brotherhood Without Banners was formed, drawing upon the lessons learned from the Kingsguard struggle against the Kingswood Brotherhood. The Brotherhood has an extensive network of houses, prostitutes, and spies that have showed up to Riverrun for some reason. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang is off to the very important task of executing Freys. Huh. I mean, the Brotherhood believes in collective punishment and all, but shouldn't Merritt Frey and Peter Pimple be way down the list of people to kill? And what have the Freys ever done to the Brotherhood Without Banners or the small folk? So what's going on? Well, when Brienne visits the Elder Brother on the Quiet Isle, the Elder Brother talks about how various corpses have been washing up. We bury them side by side, Stark and Lannister, Blackwood and Bracken, Frey and Derry. Okay, I get Stark and Lannister, they're bitter rivals. I get Bracken and Blackwood, they're bitter rivals. But Frey and Derry? At what point did they have a rivalry? And why are Derry bodies washing up at the Quiet Isle? I mean, in a Game of Thrones, Sir Raymond Derry has all of his forces at Riverrun, when a lot of other houses are at the Golden Tooth. He sends maybe 40 men to the Mummer's Ford, but the rest of his forces are still at Riverrun. Now, according to the Blackfish, the Mountain slaughters a garrison of Derry men, but the Mountain is famous for feeding his dead to wolves. Cat spies some other Derry forces at Riverrun, but they seem to disappear from our story. The last we hear about Derry forces, they are lawless men roaming the woods. The point being, with all the carnage in the Riverlands that might end up in a river, very few of those bodies would be Derry bodies. And the Derrys never fought against the Freys. So what on earth is the Elder Brother talking about? Why does he compare Derry and Frey in the same way as Stark and Lannister? Well, let's go back to Robert's Rebellion and the Battle of the Trident. We know that Derry forces were fighting for the Targaryens. We also know that Frey forces were late in arriving. House Frey was likely the deciding factor on who won the Trident. This is quite a betrayal to House Derry, considering that the Freys and the Derrys have two intermarriages. This betrayal is relevant to the Elder Brother, as he fought at the Trident and ended up at the Quiet Isle because of the battle. So if we look at the Brotherhood Without Banners as Derry men, their execution of Freys is understandable. They're not getting revenge for the Red Wedding, they're getting revenge for the Trident. This would explain why Freys like Stevron and Cleos mysteriously die before the Red Wedding. But the Brotherhood can't possibly believe they can kill off every single Frey. There's way too many of them. But they don't need to kill off every Frey, they just need to create a lot of grieving widows and daughters. What do I mean? Now take Gatehouse Amy. Yes, she's a slut, but she's also the gatehouse to Derry lands. Marry and have a child with her, and you get Derry lands with the legitimacy of Derry blood. With Merritt Frey dead, he can't stake a claim through his wife, and has no say in his daughter's wedding. A similar situation exists with Peter Pimple and the seat of Nightsong in the Stormlands. And with the death of another Frey or two, you could probably pull it off for the twins. So who's going to marry these women and take control of these lands? Well, as the title of this video suggests, it seems that the Brotherhood Without Banners are Targaryen loyalists. Thoros and the rest of the Brotherhood are followers of the Red God, just like Illyrio and the many Dany supporters in Volantis. Greenbeard is a Tyroshi, and the Archon of Tyrosh took great interest in Dany's wedding, notches from a village that were loyalists. And Tom of Sevens was once belittled in the Vale and forced to sing The King Without Courage. Now this is an interesting story. Tom is robbed of everything except for his harp and arrives at the Eyrie naked. The Vale Knights mock his nakedness and force him to sing the Name Day Boy. This is logical, but then they force him to sing The King Without Courage. Tom is furious about this and refuses to ever sing that song again. So who is the King Without Courage? Well, it can't be a Riverland king, because that would anger Lysa, and it can't be about Robert, because that would be treason. Really, it has to be about a Targaryen. And considering Tom is so emotionally attached to the king, it's likely Aerys or some other king that he lived under. And now let's talk about Lem Lemoncloak. Lem is weirdly associated with kisses and death. What do I mean? Well, when the Ghost of High Heart asks to be paid for her dreams, Lem Lemoncloak says, "I had a dream myself last night. I was kissing this tavern wench I used to know. Are you going to pay me for that, old woman?" In a major buzzkill, the Ghost of High Heart says, "The wench is dead. Only worms may kiss her now." The gang returns to the ghost later in the story, and kisses again come up. "A skin of wine for my news, and a kiss from the great oaf in the yellow cloak. His mouth will taste of lemons, and mine of bones." It turns out there's a knight whose sigil is skulls and kisses. The man's name is Richard Lonmouth. His sigil is also covered with yellow, so it may be that Lem is this man. And who did Richard Lonmouth squire for? Rhaegar Targaryen, The fate of Richard Lonmouth is unknown, but he almost certainly fought at the Trident with Rhaegar. Could he have floated downriver like the elder brother and survived? They wouldn't be the only characters that disappeared at the Trident. Jonathan Darry of the Kingsguard is also missing. And the elder brother says something weird. He says the Quiet Isle has found 6 of Rhaegar's rubies, and they are waiting for a 7th. Since broken men are also known for washing up and being rehabilitated, like the Hound, who is really the gravedigger, I wonder if rubies is the same as broken men. We'll talk about the elder brother some more later on, but it seems that the Brotherhood Without Banners is prepping the Riverlands for a Targaryen Red God invasion. They're winning over the small folk and spreading the religion of the Red God like wildfire. They also seem to be removing lords from lands, which should prove useful for the Golden Company. John Connington specifically says that the exiled lords and knights of the Golden Company will be looking for lands, and a number of them seem to be from the Riverlands or have taken on Riverlander names. Coincidentally, Miles Toyne, a descendant of Simon Toyne, was a commander of the Golden Company and very good friends with John Connington. But if the Brotherhood Without Banners is for the Targaryens, that means when they showed up to Riverrun with all those houses, they weren't there to rescue or liberate Jane Westerling, Edmure Tully, and the Blackfish. They were there to capture them for themselves. Now, Jane Westerling was likely switched out for an imposter. The one that Jaime meets doesn't seem to match the one that Catelyn meets. The real Jane Westerling likely escaped with the Blackfish, whose loyalties are a mystery. However, there's almost no place that's safe for Jane Westerling to go in Westeros, especially if she's pregnant. Blackfish and his now disarmed Tully soldiers really have no other choice than to join the Brotherhood. That is, unless they were already working with them. Now I'd like to talk about religion for a second. The Brotherhood are followers of the Red God, but they follow it in a very different way than, say, Melisandre. While Melisandre calls other gods false and is hostile to them, Thoros makes people of other religions his allies. The Brotherhood associates with Septons, who follow the faith of the Seven, but they also associate with the ghost of Highheart, who follows the Old Gods. Additionally, numerous characters seem to have the experience of being reborn after coming out of a river, some even receiving a kiss. This is much like the religion of the drowned god. It's almost as if the Brotherhood follows a unity religion, or as Septon Maribald explains, no one could doubt the value of a smith, and so we named one of the 7 in his honor, but we might have easily called him the farmer, or the fisherman, the carpenter, or the cobbler. What he works at makes no matter. What matters is, he works. This same argument could be used to link, say, the Father and the Red God. And it would explain why Aegon, despite being raised with a Septon, wears rubies and has a maester very interested in the Red God. And a unity religion is my only explanation to why Bloodraven would be helping the Brotherhood. Now, I mentioned the horse in the stable of the Inn of the Kneeling Man before, but the Bloodraven connection goes beyond this. Beric Dondarrion is also a one-eyed corpse of a man who sits on a weirwood throne. But also, Sir Raymond Darry's original plan of starting a war between the Starks and the Lannisters relied on Robert dying. Robert, as king, could probably bring peace between the Starks and the Lannisters. So how can one guarantee that Robert will die? And getting him drunk is not a guarantee. The only way to ensure that Robert dies is to control the boar. And we know that green seers like Bloodraven can control animals. Although this may seem far-fetched, keep in mind that Robert himself thinks the boar is sent by the gods. And he calls the boar a bastard. And he stabs the boar in the eye. Bloodraven just happens to be a one-eyed bastard god. But most importantly, Bloodraven says every song must have a balance. Now we could argue all day about what is ice and what is fire and what is iron and what is bronze and what is water and what is earth, but what's important is that certain characters are working towards a balance, and other ones aren't. Whether it be Rhaegar's efforts with Lyanna, or the Ghost of High Heart's efforts with Jenny of Oldstones, we have characters that are trying to fulfill prophecy and create balance. Now, I understand this video is coming to a close, and there's many questions I haven't answered, because, frankly, I don't know. But I'll focus on a big one. Why does the Brotherhood care about Cat, Jaime, and Brienne? The Brotherhood spends a lot of time talking about Jaime's movements in A Storm of Swords, and spends a lot of time following Brienne around in A Feast for Crows. The Brotherhood also takes in Lady Stoneheart as their leader for some reason. Now, the oath to find Sansa is the thing that binds these 3 characters, so I have to assume that the reason that the Brotherhood is interested in these 3 is for Sansa. There are a number of things that point to Sansa being at the center of prophecy, including Loras as a blue rose crowning her at the hand's tourney, and Dantos, the last king of Duskendale, kidnapping her. So while Aegon may want to marry Daenerys, the Brotherhood Without Banners seems to have their own ideas on who he should marry. This may explain why they spend so much time talking to the Ghost of High Heart. Now here's a bit of weird foreshadowing. In The Hedge Knight, Dunk and Egg attend the Ashford tourney. At the tourney, there are 5 champions to the jousting. The champions happen to be a Baratheon, a Tyrell, a Lannister, a Hardying, and a Targaryen. And by chance, those are the surnames of the men that people tried to marry to Sansa. Could Aegon be the 5th? And will the Brotherhood make Jaime and Brienne rescue Sansa in the Vale? A certain Tully who used to live in the Vale would make a very good guide. Only time will tell, as the Riverlands remains one of the most mysterious fronts in Of Ice and Fire. I'm probably wrong about half of this, and next time we'll talk about the Maesters and whether or not they killed the dragons.